Welcome to FedScoop TV. I'm Wyatt Cash, and we're here at the Red Hat 2016 Government Symposium. And joining us is Jenn Hoover. Jenn is Project Manager at DHS's Customs and Border Protection. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So we're talking about open source, and one of my first questions for you really is, as we kind of come to the end of this administration, how have you seen open source make an impact generally and at your agency in particular?
Sure. I think the Obama administration really put together some really great things with open source and has pushed it very extremely with USDS, the U.S. Digital Services, and they put out the USDS playbook in which the 13th play is default to open. And we have really taken that and run with it at Customs and Border Protection. We try to focus on open source tools and also sharing code. For example, we have a common framework team that has put together kind of what our application should look like across the board, what all of our applications should look like, and they have put that code out there into GitHub for the public to use and see as part of the open source initiative that the Obama administration put out.
And how do you see open source evolving as we go forward, regardless of who ends up in the White House in a few weeks?
Yeah, I really hope that it continues to move forward in the way that it has. I know bringing USDS in and the people that they hire to bring into the different agencies have helped push it. And with open source being on the forefront now, it's really allowed the government to kind of step away from COTS products and instead focus on open source tools and being able to use that and use the community surrounding open source. So continued support from the upcoming administration would be fantastic, and hopefully they'll continue doing that, and USDS will continue moving forward and helping the agencies transform and modernize in IT.
Well, let me ask you about cybersecurity and security issues in general. There's often a misperception that with open source there's more challenges. How do you see security, and what steps does your agency take to just ensure that it's meeting your, complying with all the kind of rules of the road?
So open source is a great collaborative community, and one of the great things about having a very large community across the world is that they do share both positive and negative things. So in security specifically, the government could really benefit from using open source to find security threats that are potentially out there, that are imminent, and research that ahead of time and possibly get in front of it by coding things into the applications that will prevent security threats from happening early on. That being said, whenever we do implement an open source tool, for example, we never go with the latest and greatest. We're very cognizant that there may be issues, and we really take the opportunity to work with our security teams to make sure any open source tools or technology that we're using is thoroughly vetted ahead of time.
Great. Next, I'd like to ask you about the subject of IT modernization. It's certainly been an important point of discussion with U.S. CIO Tony Scott, the aging infrastructure and our need to modernize. How do you see open source contributing or supporting that?
I think my organization is in the process of modernizing, and again, it comes back to tools. And I run our standardized development environment at CBP, and in doing so, we are able to bring in new tools. And with us modernizing, we have these very large monolithic applications that we're working to prepare to become separate, prepare from microservices and containers and things like that, and using open source tools and technology to be able to help break those applications apart in preparation for the cloud and private public cloud, I think is really beneficial. So.
And lastly, and maybe more broadly, thinking about collaboration, mobility, the cloud, et cetera. How do you see open source influencing some of your agency's decision making as it plans ahead for its IT efforts?
One of the things that I really like about open source is it is this very large community of collaboration. That's exactly what it is. And the great thing about the open source community is people put out their lessons learned, how other agencies and other industries have embarked on journeys. So one example that I'm very heavily involved in is our mobile solution at DHS and CBP. And the mobile device management, or MDM, has been challenging for us, but by looking at industry standards and using that open source community, we've been able to understand what other people have done. So we've been able to use open source to our benefit to understand other people's lessons learned, their problems that they came across, and ways that they overcame those issues. And then at some point, we'll be able to share our lessons learned and things that we did and contribute back to that open source community.
Well, Jenn Hoover, thank you so much for stopping by, sharing a few of the insights that you're learning about open source at your agency. Appreciate your being with us.
Thank you so much, Wyatt.
Join us and see more of our coverage at fedscoop.com. Thanks for being with us. I'm Wyatt Cash.